Hello, everyone. It's Rob here. Listen, it's YouTube. You know what to do. Hit the bell and the thumbs up, right? Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Hello, Travis View. Welcome. Thanks for coming on the stream, man. This is cool.
Yeah, this is cool.
This
Thanks so much for
works.
inviting me on.
How's it going, man? How's your day been covering all this stuff?
Yeah, my day has been really busy. I have like a dozen windows open. I have trying to look at the Q research on 8kun and the QAnon followers who have sort of migrated to Telegram and the remaining kind of QAnon followers who are still on Twitter, trying to gauge where exactly how they're reacting to this turn of events that they did not see coming. Q did not predict this, the inauguration of Joe Biden.
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah. Well, this is the thing that, like, I've been kind of like diving into this over the last week or so, and like following like what they were saying leading up to this, the QAnon folks. Obviously, this is something you've been following this for years now, but this is a movement that they've really like moved the goalposts a number of times now. Like, this was supposed to be from when Donald Trump was inaugurated initially. This was supposed to be right away, right? He's won. That's when the show trials are going to start. They had the whole thing with Hillary and the ankle bracelets, and this is what they've been saying for years. And the goalposts have just continually shifted. But this is like the time that a lot of these folks had really pushed all their chips into the middle of the table on this inauguration, right?
yeah, like a lot of them literally said, like, listen, we're either going to find out if like we're going to have the greatest awakening in world history, or if it was an elaborate psyop, the very clever psyop or something like that. And what wound up happening is that but still some of them still continue to trust the plan. I mean, some big influencers like Joe M hasn't posted it at all, but some people are still, there. I mean, the reactions to today's events are kind of divided. There are lots of people who are expressing like shock and anger and disillusionment that they've been misled, but there are people who are still trusting the plan, or thinking that at any moment, I heard one theory that said that, okay, wait, they couldn't, because Biden is an illegitimate president, they had to wait until he was sworn in
Yeah.
for the military to basically do their military junta thing and basically take over the country.
Yeah.
And so that's why Biden had to be inaugurated. So they're on the edge of their seat, basically waiting for martial law to, grip the United States still.
Yeah. That was the interesting thing. But this is the kind of thing that I'm wondering about this current moment now, which is that, like, because like I said, a number of these people have built very lucrative careers off of like being like QAnon influencers, and did push their chips into the middle of the table on this. And I'm wondering, like, is it going to be possible for them to try and shift? I've already seen some people saying like, oh, it's going to be March. It's actually March. Or like you were saying, we need him to become the president and give the oath, so that way he's the real crimes now he's implicated in. Like, have you been seeing any chatter on this? Like, are they taking those steps yet? Or like, are there some people that are like not going any further than this?
There are people who are saying, knock it off. We've been duped. America is over. They're very doom and gloom. They're very apocalyptic and saying we're being controlled by China now. Rip USA. And then but there are other people who are saying like, no, wait, there's still a plan, or they kind of have a theory that Trump is like acting as like kind of a shadow president, and Biden is merely a puppet playing a role or something. I mean, honestly, over the past couple of years, I always saw lots of events where I thought like, okay, this is going to be the thing that gets them to realize that they've been duped. This is going to be the thing that makes them realize that this is all bullshit.
You'd think it would be this.
You're right. You think, listen, all the way back in 2018, Q predicted that the midterm elections would be a red tsunami. That basically Republicans would just absolutely dominate in the elections and then strengthen their control of Congress. In reality, Democrats took control of the House of Representatives. So that I felt like, okay, this clearly proved that Q has no idea, has no inside info, is in fact misleading people. So that will cause people to fall off. And it only grew from that. And this is what I mean. If you read, psychology about like cognitive dissonance and stuff. When prophecy fails by
We've talked about that a lot over the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this is this is the lesson. That's what that study found. When there are majorly disconfirming events, when someone has invested a lot into a particular worldview, they double down rather than reconsider their entire world.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, we've been talking about that a lot lately. It did seem like from the rhetoric that a lot of them were really like making it this make or break moment. But I definitely don't think that any of this is going to be going away anytime soon. So you've been covering this for a few years now. Like when you were starting off paying attention to this, like this started around with the Pizzagate stuff, right? That was like at the beginning, like before Trump was even won the election. And it really snowballed from this point. Like when you started thinking about QAnon and like making it your business to kind of know what these folks are talking about, and starting the podcast and everything, like were you envisioning a future at that time with like QAnon Congress people, and like has the explosion in popularity surprised you, or did you have this pegged from the beginning?
So yeah, I really first got interested in QAnon in the middle of 2018 when I first noticed that Charlie Kirk, this pretty obnoxious prominent pundit, started boosting some QAnon statistics. So basically, some bogus information that came straight from QAnon, and that made me concerned because that to me that was too much. Just the fact that someone as prominent as Charlie Kirk was getting into basically QAnon bullshit. And what I thought, honestly, what I thought would happen was that that it's like other people would recognize how toxic and delusional and awful this is, and the powers that be, the people who control the social media companies, politicians, business leaders, or whatever, or academics would sort of recognize that this is a bad thing and it should not grow any more than already has, and then maybe it would sort of return to just a weird fringe thing by the end of 2018. But instead, what happened was that it just kept growing and growing and growing. So no, the idea that there would be like a QAnon led inspired insurrection in the Capitol building, and we have QAnon members of Congress, and that Trump himself would repeatedly praise the QAnon community, I have to say, I did not think that would happen. I always thought that someone with more influence and power than me would prevent it from getting this bad. But I proved to be kind of naive.
Yeah. Well, because this is something that you pointed out, because you came on my podcast like 2 years ago, 49th Parallel, to talk about this stuff. And that was one thing that you pointed out at the time that I found very interesting, the way this conspiracy theory tied back to conspiracy theories that have been going on in the United States for decades, like all the way back to the Satanic Panic in the 80s, and the way it just folds in all these different conspiracy theories. And now you've seen over the last 2 years, it's kind of jumped from being this exclusive 4chan thing about Trump, and it's encompassed all this other stuff, wellness community and the anti-vax community, and it's like hoovering up all these different disparate conspiracy communities, or fringe communities online. It's been helped assisted with these AI algorithms. So that's one of the fucked up things about it, is it's grown, but it's not only grown in terms of influence, but in terms of the scope of it. And it's just like, it just keeps sucking everything up and turning it into this big one, all encompassing, like pseudo religious cult kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it really is like, like what we call it, like a big tent conspiracy theory. It's a broad coalition of everyone who believes that, everything is an illusion, and there are grand puppet masters who control every event, even like natural disasters and stuff. So whatever like baseless conspiracy theory you're into, whether it's like alien disclosure, the belief that the United States government has basically secret alien technology that they're covering up, or if you believe that JFK Jr. didn't really die in 1999, or if you just believe in secret cures, the idea that there have been suppressing secret cures. So if you believe that, whatever you're into, you're gonna be welcome into like the QAnon community. It's just sort of like a conspiracy theorist coalition. They may not all agree with everything, but they do agree that like basically the mainstream media always lies all the time about everything, and then Donald Trump is great.
Not only is this thing growing, but it's an international coalition now too. Like Canada, where I live, it's become one of the largest homes for QAnon. And it's like, I know there's like a Japanese QAnon community, and it's like, it's amazing how it's like jumped borders. and is moving away from being this Donald Trump thing, and is just being wielded by these weird reactionaries in whatever country against the sort of the globalist takeover, whoever they don't like. That's something that I found stunning too. The amount of the presence that they have here in this country.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we on the QAnon Anonymous podcast, we recently covered the Dutch QAnon, and there is actually a really prominent QAnon scene in the Netherlands. So there's a prominent Dutch rapper named Lange Frans who's full on QAnon. He has a QAnon podcast in which he interviews people. There's actually a documentary by a Dutch woman called Follow the Cabal. That's become hugely popular in the international QAnon community. So yeah, and there's also QAnon communities in Australia, Japan, South Korea. There's one big one in Finland. Germany actually has the third biggest QAnon community behind the UK and the United States, obviously. So that's very concerning. But yeah, this is an international movement.
And especially considering the sort of anti-Semitic origins, and there's no alarming, troubling parallels there.
Yeah.
Like exactly, that was one we were watching one of these influencer videos on this stream on Monday, and that was it. It was like they can go on these big spiels, and you can just like make a point every time they say like European bankers or Rothschilds and stuff like that, and that's ultimately like what it always comes back to, you know.
It used to be like, yeah, QAnon or conspiracy theorists were very sort of like, I guess segmented and individually kind of fringe. But they all found this single movement to rally around, all over the world. It's very strange, but it's just life now.
Yeah. No, but that's one like, so I don't know. You're probably familiar with this guy, Simon Parks. I've been watching Simon Parks videos.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we followed we followed this thread we saw a viral tweet that was like, you probably saw it. That was people getting texts from their parents like, you got to stock up the car, get the non-perishable food items, fill up your bathtub, fill up your gas tank,
get the radio,
yeah, stuff like that. And like one of the texts led back to simonparks.org, so we checked that out. And yeah, so apparently he has this history of like, he's been talking about like alien abductions and like energy transfers and stuff like that, and for decades. So it's like, you can see how some of these guys just like jumped on this grift, that stuff that like to talk about stuff that they've been doing like, throughout their whole careers.
I mean, we see that with actually a lot of like QAnon grifters. Like one of the biggest ones is a guy named Praying Medic, and he's basically been a kind of a religious grifter. His big thing before QAnon was divine healing. He would sell people courses, desperate people courses on how to basically heal their illnesses through the power of God. It was obviously an awful exploitative grift. But then QAnon came along, and then he realized that basically the kinds of people who are interested in his kind of grift were also interested in QAnon. So he hopped right on the Q train. So yeah, we see this a lot with like these influencers. They see the QAnon community as basically an audience that they can suck up and exploit, which is really concerning, especially because a lot of white nationalists actually see the QAnon community in the exact same way.
Yeah, and so I guess, you've been following this stuff really closely. This must have really exploded too with the pandemic, because the pandemic kind of leaned on a lot of things that they've been like talking about and hinting at for a while, about government control and the emergency broadcast system and the lockdowns. Like we've seen in Canada and Quebec, we've had these like anti-lockdown, anti-mask crowds and rallies going on. And at every single one, there's always Q flags and Q signs. So that, I imagine this was like a godsend for a lot of these influencers, because it allowed them to kind of like spin a lot of the things that they've been saying and say like, oh, look, it's like everything I've been saying is kind of coming to pass. And then also leaning into the wellness stuff, the anti-vax stuff, the people that are kind of allergic to following governmental directives like medical health initiatives and things like that, and the mask stuff. It must have been a huge gift for them.
It was. I mean, as the pandemic gripped the world, we saw like membership QAnon groups on Facebook grow by tens of thousands across the board. So it was an event that made people just absolutely believe that well, what happened was that basically people spent a lot more time indoors, and they started being a lot more anxious. They started being a lot more worried about the future, and they stopped being as trusting of basically official government sources or mainstream media sources. And you mix all that together, that's a perfect recipe for QAnon recruitment. So yeah, I mean, we this is despite the fact that, Q never actually predicted anything about the pandemic. In fact, Q didn't comment about the pandemic until long after it had already spread quite widely across the world. But there was this really it's really more of a general feeling that, reality isn't what it appears to be, and we're all being lied to. And if you get people just to be highly distrusting and highly anxious, you can sort of convince them that you have sort of the secret knowledge, the esoteric sort of facts that help them understand what's really going on, sort of behind the scenes.
This is a movement that's always been it's been based around Donald Trump from day one, right? And it's like, it seems to me, like you pointed out, if there's ever going to be a line in the sand where they say like, well, no, we're not going to believe this anymore, it's when the guy that they said was all powerful, the one that was like doing all the great stuff behind the scenes, when he submits to these globalists and like gives it apparently this fraudulent election, but still allows it to continue like this, you would think that they would move on from that. I think you're probably right to be skeptical about that. But is there anyone else, do you think, that like is waiting in the wings to kind of pick up this mantle, or is this always going to be a Trump thing? Or do you think now that Trump has been kind of weakened like this, are they going to start to kind of like try and find someone else to take his place as the kind of the figurehead of this thing?
Yeah, it was always a extremely Trump-centric movement. I mean, I often think that, I mean, QAnon followers think of Trump in the same way that Scientologists think of like L. Ron Hubbard. Even when he sort of retired from public view, and even after he died, he was still revered as someone who somehow had access to the secrets of the universe. So I really think that QAnon followers are going to treat him like that. Like even after Trump is no longer with us, and he has his, I assume it's going to be a ridiculous state funeral. That they'll continue thinking that he was the one, he was the savior of humanity and the country.
Yeah, and they've still got like Michael Flynn too. The fixation on Michael Flynn has been very funny. Like I was reading all the rumors leading up to this. Like he was supposed to be the new vice president today, when they started the military tribunals and knocked out the communication systems. They were going to swear Trump in the White House. Flynn was going to be the vice president. Their fixation on him from day one has been very funny.
But yeah, him, and definitely not Mike Pence. They've developed a huge hatred for Pence. They think that he, for some reason, was part of the satanic cabal, and they're furious at him for not unilaterally handing Trump the win on January 6th, the day of the Capitol riot. Yeah,
well, I mean, that's the funny thing about how this controversy has developed around that riot. I mean, we were watching it here on this stream, and like how much, like, when people have been fed this kind of disinformation and repeatedly told that, like, oh yeah, it's fraudulent, it's a fraudulent election that's being stolen, and Donald Trump is feeding into all these like conspiracy theories that they believe about Biden, that he's an agent of communism, and he's a Chinese plant or whatever.
Right.
And then when you fill people's heads with that, it's like, I don't know what is their next logical step supposed to be? It's like it feels like that was almost a mild expression of it.
Is really difficult to like communicate how absurd everything is. Like Pence, is like, obviously there's no good evidence that the election was fraudulent. Number one. Then number two, there's no way Pence himself could decide the election. That's never been the case. There's no constitutional route for him doing it. Basically the results of the election were set in stone, and Pence had no power to just reject electors. It's so otherworldly, fantastical. It would be like if Trump got a bunch of people to say that a Congress is going to kill Tinkerbell. You got to come to D.C. because they're going to come to kill Tinkerbell. If you don't go to the Capitol and yell at them, they're going to kill Tinkerbell, and they're rushing into the Capitol screaming, "Where's Tinkerbell? Where's Tinkerbell?" It's literally that absurd because they are being motivated to, do violence and destroy things, and in many cases ruin their lives over a fantasy of a total fantasy. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, and so we were also watching Infowars earlier because it's interesting to see Alex Jones try to thread the needle where he's been critical of QAnon, and he of course had that viral clip the other day where he was kind of like, trashing it, and he's kind of trying to thread the needle like, oh, you've all fallen for this fake thing, but that's why you need to come back and get the real fake information from me, and how he's trying to pull those people back into the fold, even though he was one of the ones that was pushing the whole Pizzagate thing in the first place, that helped create that whole storyline that turned into this thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Alex Jones, he's been around the block. He knows how this works. I mean, he really sort of came to prominence during the Clinton administration. So basically, he knows the kinds of messaging that's going to resonate in this new path. And so, yeah, he was obviously, he was doing what everyone was doing. It was that you saw that the QAnon community was a ripe recruiting ground for his grift, and he started trying to message to them. And also, he also started encouraging people to go to his bands.video website and create their own content. And this was a clever move because he kind of recognized that the future of conspiracy theorizing isn't simply sitting back and watching videos and consuming content. It's also participatory. It's about creating your own content.
It's like an ARG.
Conspiracy theories. Exactly. It's like, the gamification of modern conspiracy theorizing, which has been enabled by social media, has been an interesting development. And I think that Alex Jones, who's been very adaptable over the decades in his conspiracy theory business, is recognizing that.
Yeah. Well, Travis, I don't want to keep you too much longer. Thanks for taking the time to come and chat with us. Like, I think you're right. I think, I was pointing out that a number of people did seem to have like a line in the sand for today as being the day when the plan finally comes together and the storm is upon us, and everything that they've been saying. But I think you're correct to be skeptical about that. As we all know, this is not going to go anywhere. It's just going to shift and mutate and probably continue growing. So I appreciate the work you do covering this stuff. I would like to think that today you could be like Thanos and just like sit down and relax and rest and just kind of not have to think about this stuff anymore. But my suspicion is that you're probably still going to have to be covering this stuff probably years from now when, it's the government is in full control of these people.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I often say, it's like history teaches that far right movements don't cool down during a democratic administration. It's typically the opposite actually happens.
Especially if there's not an economic crisis, which it could very well be around the corner as well for the United States.
Yeah. So, we are not, so we are going to enter. I don't know what QAnon is going to look like exactly, partly because a lot of it depends upon what the hell Trump is going to do. I don't know if he's going to harness these people and grift them or whatever. But it is something that's probably going to be with us in some form or another for at least a generation. So I'm going to try and keep track of it as best as I can in that time.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, Travis. It was great to talk to you, man. I appreciate you taking the time to come on and chat with us here.
It's been fun. Have a good one, Rob.
All right. You too, man. Take care. Yeah, this shit is not going to go away, everybody. This shit is not going away. All right, that's the end of the video, everyone. Thank you for watching it. If you haven't already, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell, leave a comment or whatever, or don't, and I'll talk to you soon, okay? All right, bye.